Hi, this is Miriam Stalsworth. I am so happy to be here today, and I have to share a topic with you that I think you will so hopefully relate to and that will help you. As this session is about a wise woman builds her house, I'm going to talk to you today about Abigail and Nabal. Now, some of you might know this story very well, some of you might not. But what I like to do, and I'm hoping today for you, is that you will see yourself in this character, or that you have people like your spouse or somebody, a brother, an uncle, somebody who you maybe have had some contact with, and you will see how this wise woman has built her house. Now, in the Hebrew, when it talks about a house, it is kind of an idiom or an expression that a man's house is his wife. So wherever she is, wherever his house is, that is his wife. That's a very beautiful picture. But the word Abigail in the Hebrew, now the B and the V are interchangeable in the Hebrew language. So it could be Avi, or Avi, and that means my father. So Abigail means my father's joy. Isn't that a beautiful character quality? You know, in the ancient times, and we don't do that quite so much today, every name has such meaning, and they carefully chose it. Now, on the other hand, we have her husband Nabal, and Nabal meant fool or foolish. How terrible to be born with that name. And this man operated in these qualities. But you will see when I go and talk to you today about how she handled this situation. So much of my reference is from 1 Samuel 25, and also All the Women of the Bible by Edith Deen, Deen. And it tells the story of Abigail. Now, she's not known very much, not talked about after this situation, but she happened to be one of David's wives. How incredible is that? But let's get into the story a little bit, and then we can look at these character qualities. You know, David was running from Saul, and he had a group of men. He had a bodyguard, and he also had about 400 or more men, I think maybe close to 600 men that were with him. And this was a place of sheep shearing time. It was considered a feast. And David had the opportunity for some of his men to meet Nabal's men. Now, Nabal had come from a town called Maon, Maon, but it was a kind of not very green place, but it was very close to Carmel, greenery, beautiful. He was a very wealthy man. He had it said in the scriptures in 1 Samuel 25, 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. And he was just full of tremendous wealth. And so he really didn't have anything to worry about. He had a wife that was said to be very intelligent and extremely beautiful on the outside. But I also would like to compare today to the Proverbs 31 woman, and how, you know, beauty can be very lovely, but it is a woman who fears the Lord that has to be praised. And so I was blessed for 42 years to have my husband say this over me. And when you look into each other's eyes, you cannot be mad at each other. How wonderful is that? But in this situation, David's men were getting hungry, and so they took off, some of them, and they went to Nabal and they asked him if they could have some food. You know, it isn't like today where you could just go out and shop. they had to hunt or they didn't have food available to them anymore. And David's men were very, very kind and protected Nabal's men out there, and there was no difficulty. And even the men said that they were treated so lovely by David and his men. So when they went and they asked, oh, Nabal says, should I give up my food, my sustenance? Who is this David that he thinks after he's run away from he can have anything of mine? No. And so he was very upset and he said no. Well, this is a great example of not being very generous and not treating these men who did incredible kindness to his men when they were out in the field. So what happens next in this story is that, oh my, here some of Nabal's men were listening. And as they were listening, they went back to Abigail and told him about this. Now, rather than her getting all upset and kind of a knee-jerk reaction, and maybe some of us have done this sometimes, we get so upset. But what she didn't go to her husband because he was in a feast. He had a tendency to get very drunk. And when men or women get drunk, they say things. Sometimes they can be very, very angry. And so she just took her wisdom and she went and started baking all these breads, taking sheep, everything. And she gets on her donkey with some of her men. And what does she do? She goes over and she meets David, who is coming in the other direction, coming towards, though, in the field, towards Carmel and to Nabal. And he has heard of what Nabal has said from his men. He is angry and he is going to absolutely kill anybody in this household. And what does she do? She does humility. And she bows before him and says to him, my Lord, please accept these gifts of food. And you of all people don't want to have this reputation that you would go out and kill these men because you hold the kingship of Israel later on. This is a prophetic statement. Isn't that incredible? So she said, look what you're going to have. Do you want to have this be brought up that you did something and because he returned evil for good doesn't mean that you should do that. So he talks to her, he accepts it. So what is this character quality? She showed kindness, she showed humility, and she also showed, look what is going to happen in the future. She built David up rather than also saying anything negative about her husband. She said, oh, my Lord, take it upon me. I will take the blame for it. Here is a true peacemaker. Now, I know there's times when we don't want to be a peacemaker and we don't want to pray for our enemies. And it says not to deal in Proverbs with a fool because you will not get anywhere. And how sad that this man was named fool. In other words, it said in many cases, worthless. But he did not think so. And he took all these possessions and he was having this great feast. So when she came back, did she go in there and said, look what you've done, but look what I did? No, she didn't. She let him sleep it off. Another good character quality of a wise woman. She doesn't go in and uses a loud voice, finds all this fault of what her husband did and say, look what I did. I took care of this, almost in a way of putting her husband down in such a way to make him less than. She let him sleep it off. And what did she do? The next day, she told her husband, yes, this is what happened. And he was mortified. It said that it struck his heart so that he had done this. Now, whether this pierced his conscience, but he was far from drunk at that time. And he got so upset that it said 10 days later he died. His heart gave out. So this was just taken care of. She didn't yell at him, but God took care of the situation. Now, maybe it's not the situation that today happens, because there were times that God just took care of things with people. And maybe he does that today, but we don't wish death upon anybody. We certainly would love a change of character. But David heard this, and he heard of what happened, and he went back to her, and he asked her now to be his wife. And she accepted, and she bowed down, and she even said, I will wash your feet. Here she was going to be the wife of a king. She also had great wealth, and as becoming a widow, she was given great wealth and great property. And she brought this all along with her, and she still was humble before him. So what are we saying? What do we glean for this? No matter what Torah portion we are studying or what character in the Bible, I learn so much more if I put myself into this character. So I'm looking at Abigail in times of distress, in times when I have had somebody say things to me, or if things have happened with somebody in my family, what is the best thing to do? What did Abigail do? Well, I would say first, so important to pray and to stay calm and to stay humble. And she was also very intelligent. She was very precise. She handled things. She just went ahead. She didn't say, look what I did or look what I had to do. She was a woman of valor. So I'm going to look right now at Proverbs 25. It says, if your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. For you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you. David was very angry. And what did she do? She went and brought him this food and to make amends and say, take it upon me. And sometimes when we see ourselves, when you are in a marriage situation, the two of you become one. Do you protect your husband, and maybe lovingly at another time when it is appropriate, like Abigail did she go and talk to him? Now, in this case, it didn't work out that he changed his mind. In fact, it was a very deadly situation, wasn't it? Now let's go to Proverbs chapter 26, 4. Do not answer a fool according to his folly, lest you also be like him. Another example, don't do this. It will not be successful. Have discernment. And as we begin to close, I would like to talk to you a little bit about Proverbs 31. Did she exhibit those qualities? It says, charm is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Abigail was not in fear of meeting David. She was more in fear of what the Lord would think of her. But a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised, and her husband also will praise her. Isn't that incredible? Don't we want that from everybody, that they praise us, even our children? She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. How wonderful is that? She works diligently. That's what Abigail did. She took it in her own hands. Her lamp does not go out at night. She was faithful. Her light was shining. Kind of an example, just like Sarah and Rebecca, and the great gift of hospitality. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she smiles at the future. She opens her mouth in wisdom. Do we open our mouths in wisdom? And the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. This is what Abigail did. My father's joy. What a perfect picture of a very wise woman that we don't hear very much about afterwards. But in the story in 1 Samuel, later on, she gives birth to one child, but she was just one of David's wives. He had others, and at that time, that was very acceptable. And I am sure she will be known, as we meet her someday, as a woman of great value. And she is an Eshet Chayil. And how beautiful is that, that we can every Friday night, ladies, have an opportunity to be blessed if you have a mate. And if not, use this for another situation. How do you build your house when somebody in your family comes home and they're very upset? How do you handle it? Do we jump? Do we go and tell other people about it? Or do we take it to prayer and also be very peaceful and peace loving? This is examples that we were not in any way being weak, that she did not stand up, but she took it upon herself to handle the situation. So may you be blessed today. I hope as you go over this story again, that will say, wow, how am I exhibiting these qualities? And if I meet somebody like a Nabal, or if I have somebody in my household, or if I know somebody like this, what is the best way to handle it? I don't think with great anger and shouting back or telling others, this is not the way. May the words of kindness be upon our lips. Is it appropriate? Is it the right time to do this? She handled things so beautifully. And as we go about building our house, we do not want to tear it down by doing anything that would be against these qualities. May you be blessed today. Shalom, everybody.